If you have opened your fridge or your pantry today and grabbed something you thought was a healthy choice, there is a real chance you were wrong. And I'm not talking about the obvious junk food everyone already knows to avoid. I'm talking about foods sitting on grocery store shelves labeled as everyday staples, foods many of us were raised eating without a second thought, that carry hidden risks most people never learn about. Today, I'm going to walk you through 6 of them, explain exactly what the concern is with each one, and more importantly, tell you what you can actually do about it without throwing your entire diet into a panic. Stay with me until the end, because the last one on this list surprises almost everyone who hears about it for the first time. Welcome back to VitaRoot Health, the channel where we take complicated nutrition science and break it down into information you can actually use in your everyday life. We're not here to scare you or tell you to throw out everything in your kitchen. We're here to help you make informed choices based on real evidence, so you can protect your long-term health without losing your mind over every single food decision. If that sounds like your kind of channel, make sure you're subscribed, because today's topic is one that affects almost everyone watching this video. Let's start with the first food on our list, and it's one that catches a lot of people off guard: processed deli meats. Ham, bologna, salami, hot dogs, the deli counter staples that end up in millions of sandwiches every single day. The concern here centers around nitrates and nitrites, preservatives used to extend shelf life and maintain that appealing pink color. Under certain conditions, particularly high heat cooking, these compounds can form nitrosamines, which research has linked to increased cancer risk. This concern is significant enough that the World Health Organization has classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, placing it in the same risk category as tobacco smoking in terms of the strength of evidence connecting it to cancer, specifically colorectal cancer. Now, I want to be clear about something important here. Classification in that category reflects the strength of the evidence that a link exists, not necessarily the magnitude of the risk itself. Eating a hot dog at a summer barbecue occasionally is very different from consuming processed meat as a daily dietary staple over years and decades. The dose and frequency matter enormously. If processed meat is a regular, near-daily part of your diet, that's worth reconsidering and shifting toward fresh, unprocessed protein sources more often. Number 2 on our list is something that surprises almost everyone: farmed salmon, along with several other types of farmed fish. Salmon has this fantastic reputation as a health food, loaded with omega-3 fatty acids and lean protein, and when it comes to wild-caught salmon, that reputation is well-earned. But farmed salmon, which makes up a massive portion of what's actually sold in grocery stores, comes with a different profile of concerns. Farmed fish are often raised in crowded conditions and fed diets that can lead to higher concentrations of contaminants like polychlorinated biphenyls, commonly known as PCBs, along with other environmental toxins that accumulate in fatty tissue. Additionally, farmed salmon typically contains a different, less favorable ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids compared to their wild counterparts, partly because of what they're fed. This doesn't mean you need to eliminate salmon from your diet entirely, but it does mean checking the label matters. Choosing wild caught when it's available and affordable, and varying your fish sources rather than relying on the same farmed variety week after week can meaningfully reduce your exposure to these accumulated contaminants over time. Third on our list, and this one is going to be controversial for some of you: fruit juice. Even the varieties labeled 100% juice with no added sugar. Here's the issue. When you eat a whole orange, you get fiber that slows down sugar absorption, along with a natural volume of food that helps you feel full. When you drink a glass of orange juice, you're consuming the sugar from multiple oranges in a concentrated liquid form, stripped of that fibrous structure, and your body absorbs that sugar rapidly. This causes a much sharper spike in blood sugar than eating the whole fruit would. Over time, regularly consuming concentrated fruit sugars in liquid form has been associated with increased risk factors for metabolic issues, including insulin resistance. This doesn't mean fruit juice is poison in the dramatic sense, but treating it as an equivalent substitute for whole fruit is a mistake many people make, especially when it comes to how much of it we tend to pour into a single glass without a second thought. Fourth, we need to talk about certain vegetable oils, specifically those that are highly refined and heavily used in processed and fried foods. Oils like soybean oil, corn oil, and cottonseed oil. The concern here revolves around their high concentration of omega-6 fatty acids relative to omega-3 fatty acids. While omega-6 fats are essential nutrients your body genuinely needs in appropriate amounts, the modern diet has shifted dramatically toward consuming far more omega-6 than omega-3, largely because these refined oils show up in an enormous range of processed foods, from salad dressings to packaged snacks to fast food frying oil. This imbalance has been linked in research to increased inflammatory processes in the body. Additionally, when these oils are repeatedly heated to high temperatures, as happens in commercial deep frying, they can form harmful compounds, including aldehydes, which have been associated with various negative health outcomes when consumed regularly over time. The fix here isn't necessarily eliminating all vegetable oils, but rather diversifying your fat sources to include more olive oil, avocado oil, and foods naturally rich in omega-3 fatty acids, while being more mindful of how much fried and heavily processed food makes up your regular diet. Fifth on today's list, and this one hides in an enormous number of everyday products, artificial sweeteners, particularly when consumed in large, regular quantities. Products marketed as sugar-free or diet-friendly often rely on these to deliver sweetness without the calories, and for some people in specific contexts, they can be a useful tool. But emerging research has raised legitimate questions about their long-term effects, including potential impacts on the gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system that play a critical role in everything from digestion to immune function to even mood regulation. Some studies have suggested that certain artificial sweeteners may alter the composition of gut bacteria in ways that could affect glucose metabolism, essentially working against the very goal many people are using them to achieve. The research in this area is still evolving and not entirely settled, which is exactly why moderation and awareness matter here rather than blanket avoidance or blanket acceptance. If you're consuming multiple diet sodas or artificially sweetened products every single day, it's worth paying attention to how your body responds and considering whether reducing that frequency might be worthwhile. And now, the sixth food on our list, the one that tends to surprise people the most, white rice, particularly when it becomes a dominant, near-daily staple in someone's diet. This one is less about a hidden toxin and more about an underappreciated risk, arsenic exposure. Rice, as a crop, has a unique tendency to absorb arsenic from soil and water more readily than most other grains, a byproduct of decades of environmental contamination from various industrial and agricultural sources. Both organic and inorganic arsenic can be found in rice, with inorganic arsenic being the form of greater health concern due to its classification as a known human carcinogen at higher exposure levels. For most people eating rice occasionally, this isn't a significant concern. But for those eating rice multiple times daily as a primary dietary staple, cumulative exposure over months and years becomes a more relevant consideration. There are practical steps that meaningfully reduce this risk, including rinsing rice thoroughly before cooking, using a higher ratio of water to rice and draining the excess afterward, similar to how pasta is cooked, and varying your grain choices to include quinoa, barley, oats, and other alternatives, rather than relying on rice as your only carbohydrate source. Now, before you go clear out your entire pantry in a panic, I want to bring this back to something really important. Context and dosage matter enormously in nutrition science. Almost nothing on this list represents an acute, immediate danger from occasional consumption. The concerns we've discussed today are about cumulative, long-term exposure patterns, what you eat regularly, day after day, month after month, year after year, not what you eat at a single meal or during an occasional indulgence. The goal here isn't fear, it's awareness. Understanding these risks gives you the ability to make small, sustainable adjustments, choosing wild-caught fish more often, varying your grains, cutting back on processed deli meats, being more mindful of fruit juice portions, diversifying your cooking oils, and paying attention to how frequently you're reaching for artificially sweetened products. I also want to remind you that nutrition science is constantly evolving, and what we understand today continues to be refined as new research emerges. The recommendations I've shared here are based on current, credible research, but they aren't meant to replace personalized guidance from a registered dietitian or your doctor, especially if you have specific health conditions, are pregnant, or are managing a chronic illness where dietary choices carry additional weight. If anything in today's video raised questions specific to your own health situation, that conversation with a qualified professional is always the right next step. At the end of the day, food should never become a source of constant anxiety. The healthiest approach isn't perfection, it's awareness paired with balance. Small, informed swaps made consistently over time will do far more for your long-term health than dramatic, unsustainable overhauls driven by fear. Knowing what's actually in your food and understanding the real, evidence-based context behind these concerns puts the power back in your hands to make choices that genuinely serve your body over the long run. That brings us to the end of today's video. If this helped you look at your grocery list a little differently, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who deserve to know what's actually going on with their food. Drop a comment below and let me know which one of these 6 surprised you the most. I read every single comment, and it helps shape what we cover next. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to VitaRoot Health, because we'll keep bringing you evidence-based breakdowns like this one to help you take real control of your health. Thank you so much for watching, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.